There were four of them, alien species that ruled large swathes of the galaxy. Their technology was far more advanced than ours, a result of deliberate seeding from precursors who needed them for a war against a distant galactic empire. They won on both accounts. After the fall of the empire, they turned their attention on their uplifters and saw their offer of peaceful concordance as a weakness. 4 against 1 led to a swift and brutal end to these precursors, as well as the loss of any control over the technology, due to them coding it to work only under their DNA. It's why when we discovered the precursor tech far out on Pluto, the least likely dwarf planet, and apparently piece of a larger planet that had been detonated eons ago, we were only moderately surprised when the technology worked for us. When we made first contact, it sparked a brief and brutal war. The tech was a godsend, certainly, but our contemporary modern technology ironically helped us clear the gap. We intuited the weaknesses of their comparatively cobbled-together warships, broke their formations, even threatened a few garden planets and at least one homeworld before they capitulated to our demand for peace. It boggled their minds how we were able to so thoroughly trounce them, yet still wanted peaceful coexistence. They expected conquering kings, not diplomats. We could have demanded anything from them. We wanted all access to their precursor technology, and we wanted to settle our differences and talk about a treaty, which became the Quintarian States Peace Accord, or the QSPA. We only learned about the genocide of our precursor ancestors after the fact, a detail that they feared we would kill them for. We wouldn't stoop to your level. Our response, cold and bitter, was far harsher than any genocide we could have done against them. It made them more amicable, especially since we allowed them some say in how things were. They had purposefully avoided our sector of the galaxy. It was apparently the heart of the precursor empire, and our ancestors were just as spiteful and vindictive as the rest of us, going out with a bang rather than a whimper. Still, we advocated for peace. The accord stated any demand made must be matched with one from the rest of the Quintarian states. We had gently yet firmly vetoed the term accordion, explaining it sounded like a human instrument, and we'd never take it seriously, or any who did not make a demand at that time either vetoed the demand or would accept it. So for every demand we made, we had to agree to 4 others or stonewall our own attempts at peace. And we made it clear any attempt to outmuscle us on the political front was only going to lead to violent retaliation. Even if we observe just Kogans for the most part, that doesn't mean we're going to let them bully us. Our first demand was that they all agree to abide by such things as the Geneva Convention, our codified rules of war. They argued that it was several demands rolled into one. We argued, we are laying out every rule we have so you understand where we're coming from and so we don't blindside you with a tactic you can't possibly see coming. They only agreed on 4 terms, of course. The first term, we abolish any form of government that they deemed pointless. Democracy, socialism, so on and so forth. We argued we'd outgrown the feudalistic and monarchical system of governance and that democracy was the primary means by which we ensured the voice of the people could be heard. They countered with the unavoidable fact that the balance of power was skewed toward the wealthy regardless, that our democratically appointed representatives were lords in all but name, and that our commander-in-chief was basically 1/3 of an entire monarch. We conceded their point, which is why we requested if this was the way things were to be, then we at least exercise democracy one last time to at least choose who would be our monarch, which they allowed. The second term, we abolish our world currencies in favor of their galactic standard, which was a series of lightweight yet extremely durable coins made from an unknown alloy that were difficult to forge, even with precursor tech. The only mint available being controlled by a single machine. An additional remark was made that we'd share equal custody of the mint to prevent unnecessary inflation. The currency was, of course, backed by gold. We were granted all of the gold in our sector as our backing. This left us moderately wealthy as a planet, and that wasn't even taking into consideration the gold that wasn't found yet. We will agree to this, our representatives had said, but we would like to discuss the concept of banking and credit at a later time. They would later unilaterally agree to this due to its convenience. The third term was that we would assimilate to their culture. We could practice our culture on Earth. We just couldn't try to force them to change, since they were the majority. That didn't preclude them adopting anything we had, but we made sure they understood that anyone caught appropriating our homeworld cultures would have to agree to a system-wide reform, which they grudgingly accepted. Since they were largely feudalistic and monarchical, we did eventually adopt our own historically feudalistic dress mixed with fantasy elements simply to fuck with them. This did lead to the night frames being built. The third term was mass conversion to their galactic religion. We flatly told them no, but they were welcome to proselytize if that was an acceptable alternative, which they agreed to in the name of peace. Their religion was largely animistic, regarding the universe itself as some occasionally benevolent force worthy of worship, and everything within it, whether natural or artificial, having a spirit or soul. That made the development of AI interesting, since the rest of the galaxy regarded them as humans. The fourth term was actually fairly simple, all things concerned. All scientific and medical knowledge must be shared freely with the rest of us, and must be freely available to all citizens of the Quintarian states. Since our economic state had been effectively reset, we simply agreed on the condition that they ensure they did the same for us. Further details were ironed out, but the result of everything could be described best as malicious compliance. We chose our monarch, Emperor Adrian Grant, who asked the people to help him choose the council that would help him govern his empire, then the lords who would oversee the smaller-scale governance. We basically redid democracy with the emperor as largely a figurehead who did have legitimate power. The other states cried foul, but our benevolent emperor simply said, "I can't be expected to make every choice, and I trust my subjects to guide me to a just and fair conclusion of our laws, as they trust me to rule justly and fairly in return." The adoption of our own anachronistic apparel, the development of the Night Frame's powered armor shaped similarly to knight's armor, hard light bows and swords that could do better than an average gun or melee weapon. All of it was just impractical enough to be cool, but awesome enough to be worth the other states' confusion. The adoption of the galactic religion was genuine, though. The fact that our creation myths were basically poetic retellings of our planet being seeded with life kind of made everything we believed in feel fake. Still, we observed our holidays in honor of the past, and the gods who turned out to be our thousands times great-grandparents. We still work hard to regain that former glory our ancestors held. We look for fragments of their culture, taking it as our own simply because we can. One day, when our descendants have long forgotten the way things used to be, they will have their own galactic empire, and it will most certainly be due to our neighbors' insistence on following their ways.